Good morning, everyone. Before we start our prelude, I wanted to let you know that there's an opportunity to light a candle for a joy or sorrow that is on your heart this morning. And if you'd like me to share it during the prayer, you can fill out a card, and I'll pick those up and share your joy or sorrow during the prayer. So as we listen to our beautiful prelude music, please feel free to light a candle and or fill out a card. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us this morning, those of you here in person and our community on Zoom. It's great to be with you on this beautiful winter morning. I want to welcome you to our Sunday service. We are glad you are here. I'm the Reverend Lucy Bunch, and I'm here today with Reverend Dr. Roger Jones and our worship associate, Celia Buckley. Reverend Roger is preaching today, and his sermon is titled, Showing Up, Intention, Action, and Connection. Also here with us today are music director Anthony Tavianini and our pianist Irina Tchantceva, and our technical producers Colleen Emeris and Ivan Caballero, who make this whole service possible, all the sound and Zoom connections and lights and all of that. Our mission statement says that we come together to deepen our lives and be a force for healing in the world. And we invite you to explore all the ways to live out this mission. Our weekly message email comes out at the end of every week. And you can also find it and a lot more information about our congregation and everything that's going on at our website, UUSS.org. If you are new to us, we're so glad you're here this morning, and I hope those in the sanctuary have filled out a newcomer card out at the welcome table. We will sign you up then for our weekly message so you can know what's going on. If you're on Zoom and you're new to us, please go online to uuss.org/newcomers and fill out the form there, and we will include you in our weekly message. And please join us after the service. Those in person, you're welcome on the patio for coffee and tea and good conversation. Those of you on Zoom will be splitting into breakout rooms of about 10 or so for a chance to connect and share. That will happen just a few minutes after the service ends, so please plan on staying with us. So newcomers with us today in person will want to know that today is our newcomer orientation, which takes place on the second Sunday after the service. So if today's not good for you, mark your calendar for the February orientation. You will learn about our congregation and have a tour of the campus. It's about an hour, it takes about an hour, and meet me at the welcome table about 10 minutes after the service ends. That'll give you a chance to get a cup of coffee and say hello. Those of you on Zoom, we will be having a Zoom orientation sometime next month, so stay tuned for that. This month is also the return of our Exploring UU classes. These are a great way to learn about Unitarian Universalism. There's 4 revolving topics, and they kick off on the 4th Sunday. So on the 23rd, you can join me at 9:30 in the FOS classroom. I'll be talking about our principles and sources. So it's a great way to learn more, and everyone is welcome. I also want to let you know that there's been a group on our Between Sundays Facebook page, and if you're a member and you're not on that page, all you have to do is find it on Facebook, and I will let you in. Between Sundays, is UUSS Between Sundays. There's been an active jigsaw puzzle exchange going on for the last 2 years, and we've decided to bring it into the daylight. So there are puzzles in the bookstore, and you're welcome to take one if you'd like, if your puzzles, you've run out of puzzles, or you can bring one if you've used your puzzles and you're ready for something new. So please check out the bookstore for our puzzle exchange, and you can see everything else that they have there, the variety of options of books that are available. Now, before we start, please remember to put your cell phone on silent mode. We've had a couple of people embarrassed by their neglect in doing that, and I don't want you to be one of those people. So we're glad you're here. If you're with us at home, please get your candle or chalice ready to light for our chalice lighting ritual.
Good morning and welcome. It's good to be with you. If you're here in person, it's good to be with you if you're participating on Zoom. And if you're one of those people who likes to have an order of service, there's a few copies on the back table. And if you're on Zoom, there should be a link in the chat you can click so you can see what's going on. But the opening reading for the chalice lighting is not on the order of service, but it is on the slide which will appear. These are words by the Reverend Peter Rabel, late minister of church in Seattle, Washington, and he based this on the 4th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy. So I invite you to join with me in reading in unison, and then Celia will light our chalice. We drink from wells we did not dig. We warm ourselves by fires we did not light. We sit in the shade of trees we did not plant. We build on foundations we did not lay. We profit from persons we did not know. We are ever bound in community. May it always be so. Our opening song is Come Sing a Song With Me. If you have the gray hymnal, it's 346, but it'll be on the screen.
Rain
I haven't pruned my roses yet, so I have roses in the wintertime. At this time, we bring our joys and sorrows, our worries, our grief, and our gratitude into this beloved community. For those of you online, if you would like to tell this community what is on your heart, please open the chat box at the bottom of your screen and type in whatever it is that you'd like to share. Those of you here in the sanctuary, if you didn't have a chance to light a candle when you first came in, you may do so at this time. And if you want to fill out a card for me to share, I'll be over there for you to hand it to me. And let us all enjoy a gift of music from Irina. Thank you to those online who have shared what is on your hearts, and thanks to everyone here for bearing witness to the joys, sorrows, hopes, and gratitudes present in our community. Everyone is invited to share a joy or a sorrow with Reverend Roger or I by filling out a form online or calling the office. The link to the form is on our weekly message every week. So I want to share with you some of the joys and sorrows on our hearts of the community here present in the sanctuary. Carrie is sharing a joy for her 96-year-old dad who has recovered from several illnesses, and her sorrow in his discouragement and grief about his wife who died 20 months ago. They were married for 70 years. Allison and Cynthia are sharing concerns and wishes for the well-being of MK and Yvonne, both who are having surgery this week, and for the emotional and physical health of Cynthia's family. One among us is sharing a joy for being happy that they have been meth-free for 1 year. Yes. Congratulations. Another among us is sharing a joy that they could be there to support neighbors who lost a younger brother, and that they attended a meaningful memorial service. Let's take 3 deep breaths together to let all that we've heard settle into our bodies. Breathe in, and breathe out. This time we'll breathe out with a sigh. And one more with a great big sigh. One of the forms of prayer is simply being quiet. Being quiet and letting your body express for you your prayer. So we're going to do that together this morning. I'll show you the moves one time, and then we'll do it together in silence 3 times. So we start in a prayer pose, quiet, stilling our bodies, and with each of our poses, we'll take a deep breath in and let it out. Then we extend our hands right in front of us, connecting with ourselves, who we are in this world on this day, breathing in and breathing out. Extending our arms straight out in connection, offering our gifts to the world. We breathe in and breathe out. Reaching up as we are able, connecting to that divine spirit, the energy of that beautiful interconnected web, feeling the presence. We breathe in and breathe out. Then we bring all that good energy right into our hearts, feeling it come into our bodies as we breathe in and breathe out. We return to our prayer pose and begin again. We'll do it 3 times together silently. We'll take a deep breath with each pose. Blessed be. Let us take a moment now for silent reflection and connection to what's on our hearts this morning. Please remain seated and join in singing "We Would Be One."
This reading comes from a lecture entitled From iChurch to Beloved Community. It was given by Reverend Dr. Frederick J. Muir to a conference of UU ministers in 2012. Fred Muir is the Minister Emeritus of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Annapolis, Maryland, where he served for 34 years. Near the end of my junior year in college, on the afternoon of the first Earth Day in 1970, I was in a class on American Transcendentalism. We sat in the grass and listened as the teacher read aloud Ralph Waldo Emerson's Divinity School address. It was as though he was channeling the Sage of Concord, who was speaking to me. After class, I asked what religion Emerson was. Unitarian, he said. I asked if it still existed. Exist, he replied. Yes, it exists. There's a congregation on the west side. Do you want to go Sunday? And that was that. Prior to my Earth Day epiphany, I was religious. I had felt the pull towards ministry as a boy in my liberal Protestant church, but did not think of myself as spiritual because I never had the words to put to the spirituality I had known since childhood. No law can be sacred to me but that of my nature, Emerson proclaimed. Trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string. Emersonian individualism has become part of the American story, of course. Think of the I that's placed in front of the names of Apple products. Some say the I means internet. Others explain that the I stands for individual. This is your personal piece of technology to be used for whatever purpose you want. 15 years ago, Apple appealingly exploited the theme of individualism in a commercial that sounds like Emerson channeled through Jack Kerouac. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. They push the human race forward. Many of us were drawn to Unitarian Universalism because it seemed to be the church of Emersonian individualism. We have been the I-Church. My 37 years in the UU ministry have convinced me that the Unitarian historian Conrad Wright is correct in his critique. For people like Emerson, he writes, a true community is not constructed by people who have struggled to learn how to live together, but is made up of atomic and unrelated individuals. For all its appeal and its influence in American culture, individualism is not sustaining. Individualism will not serve the greater good, a principle to which we Unitarian Universalists have also committed ourselves. There is little to nothing about the ideology and theology of individualism that encourages people to work and live together, to create the support institutions that serve commonplace aspirations and beloved principles. The inherent worth and dignity of the individual is not just our first principle as UUs. Often it is our defining principle, but we frequently overlook another strand of our tradition in our association's principles and purposes, another story about ourselves that can deepen and grow our future. It is not the language of individualism, not of the I-Church, but of covenant. As free congregations, we promise to one another our mutual trust and support. We cannot do both covenant and individualism. Individuality, yes, but not individualism. Articulating and living our principles as a commitment to covenant, creating and sustaining a community by promising to one another our mutual trust and support. This takes extra effort.
Good morning. I have a personal reflection to share with you today on showing up. About 4 years ago, I joined a weight loss program called Food Addicts in Recovery, or FA for short. FA is a program modeled after the original Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program that originated in the 1930s. Common to virtually all 12-step programs, a member chooses another member to be their sponsor to help them work the 12 steps to achieve sobriety or abstinence from addictive behavior. Sponsors are simply other members who have used the 12-step program to achieve recovery from similar addictions or behaviors. Sponsors become a source of emotional support as they offer guidance to working the steps with their sponsee. Sponsoring not only benefits the sponsee, but is a crucial element to help the sponsor maintain their own recovery. My personal experience with FA was mixed, as I found their interpretation of the sponsor-sponsee relationship a bit unconventional from other 12-step programs. Among other things, this program gave the sponsor total control over their sponsee, their food, what to eat, where to eat, how to eat. Members were not encouraged to find their own path. I'd met enough of the FA program requirements to take on a sponsee who I became quite fond of. I'll call her Julie. My many decades in Alcoholics Anonymous supported how I sponsored Julie and encouraged her autonomy in finding a food program that worked for her. As time passed, it became clear to both of us that I no longer met the FA program requirements or qualifications to be a sponsor. Continuing to sponsor Julie when I wasn't active in the program felt dishonest, but Julie asked me to continue to sponsor her. And then the unthinkable happened. They found Julie's 18-year-old son's car on a bridge with a suicide note, but he wasn't found. Julie turned to me for emotional support. My decades of providing grief support to parents of children who died from their heart defects was a grief work foundation, but I was unprepared for the waves of shock and grief that a mother experiences when a teenager chooses suicide. That loss was unique. Her grief and anger and bewilderment roused my very being. My soul reverberated with her rawness. It was gut-wrenching to take those daily calls as the months passed. Sometimes I didn't want to answer her call. It was like putting my hand into fire. But I took her call, day or night, and we talked and wept and even sang. Eventually, they found his body after the winter rains decreased the river flow, allowing a search and recovery effort. The spark of hope that he might yet still be alive was quenched, but replaced with the ache of a final goodbye. It has been a powerful chapter in my life and my own spiritual growth. My Unitarian Universalist faith of our principles and purposes supported me as I sought words to comfort an atheist woman who yearned to find closure and peace. I felt buoyed by knowing other UUs in this congregation and in the world who are engaged in often painful justice work. Being a UU gave me the strength to show up for Julie. As a longtime sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, I needed to show up for her. As a caring friend, I needed to show up for her. Taking that daily call as she navigated her nightmare of existence was hard. But being there for someone else, witnessing, keeping faith, showing up, all forms of prayer.
Generosity is a spiritual practice, and our congregation practices generosity by giving away half of our Sunday's organization to an offering to an organization that is working to change the world. Our community partner for the month of January is the Black Child Legacy Campaign, a community-driven movement working to reduce deaths of African American children in Sacramento County. They are tackling the issues of prenatal care, infant sleep, child abuse and neglect, and third-party homicide from gang violence. We have been partnered with this group for several years and is supporting their efforts in the Arden Arcade area. Please give generously in support of this important organization. On the slide, you can see ways that you can contribute electronically or by mailing a check. It's also posted in the chat box. For those of you in the sanctuary this morning, we will be passing the basket. If you prefer not to touch the basket, just cross your arms across your chest, and folks will move it around so that you don't have to touch it. And please remember that everyone, whether you're on Zoom or in person, can text your donation to the number that is on your screen right now. Thank you for your generosity. The morning's offering will now be given and received. Please join me in the unison response. May the spirit of gratitude bless and multiply all that we have, all that we give, and all that we receive.
Our Soul Matters theme for this month of January is Living with Intention. This topic naturally brings up thoughts about the intentions that an individual person sets for the day, for a new year, for the rest of one's life. But intentions also belong to communities. This morning, I want to reflect with you on the intentions which guide us as a liberal religious congregation. As you heard in the announcements and the welcome, we have a monthly orientation session for newcomers that Reverend Lucy will lead today after the service. And in 2 weeks, we will have a class called Exploring UUism. In the past 22 months of disruption, isolation, and stress, many individuals and families have begun participating in UUSS. Some have joined officially, and others are asking about membership. We offer these programs, like the orientation, because we want to be sure that people know what it is they're getting themselves into. A person usually signs up as a member of UUSS in the presence of one of the ministers, but we are not the congregation. Of course, we fill this pulpit on Sundays and we edit the weekly message, so you may have gotten to know the ministers first. But when you become a part of the congregation, you are making a commitment to a whole group. You are joining in covenant with a whole community of people, some of whom you may not ever meet unless you are very outgoing. In any relationship, a covenant involves the goals or expectations of the relationship. It involves the purpose of being together and the nature of that togetherness. Whether it is implicit or explicitly written down, a covenant includes the promises we make about how we will support one another and how we will make decisions together. In this nation's culture, which encourages everyone to be me-oriented, a covenant is we-oriented. In this country, living by a sense of covenant is countercultural. Right now in the United States of America, we are experiencing increasing division and hostility. We experience resurgent attitudes of repudiation of one another and isolation from one another. As the dangers of the coronavirus pandemic persist, the need for all of us to wear face masks in public and to get fully vaccinated becomes ever more urgent. Yet we hear assertions that it's about freedom. Let me make my own choices about my own health. In this assertion, there is a denial that my exercise of my freedoms has an ethical connection to your health. It's a denial of my role in the safety of my community. The culture of individualism goes back a long way in this country. Since our liberal religious movement grew up in this country and grew up alongside this country, it shouldn't be surprising that Unitarians have struggled with individualism right alongside the larger American culture. In today's reading, we heard the esteemed minister Fred Muir describe the presence of individualism as a UU ideology and as our historical way of operating our congregations. As a college student, Fred was drawn to Ralph Waldo Emerson's rejection of conformity and his affirmation of the individual. In the early and mid-1800s, the religious climate of Massachusetts and other parts of New England was conventional and stifling. For some, this conventional culture was comfortable because it upheld their privilege. For others, it was cold and suffocating. Yet Emerson's answer was not to work for change from within a community, but to withdraw from it. He served as a Unitarian minister for only 3 years before he left the ministry. As a philosopher, as a teacher, as a writer, he was a great American original. But he was not a great church leader. For too many of us and for too long, we interpreted Emerson's message to be, my preferences take precedence. What matters is what I think, what I believe, what I want. Fred Muir says that we became the I Church. Think about it. For more than a century, many of our churches tried to operate on the ideology that everybody can do their own thing. We cater to individual demands instead of deciding together how we will serve the common good. Coming together, but not really coming together. It was more than a paradox, it was a recipe for pain. The Reverend Cheryl M. Walker is a UU minister in coastal North Carolina and a former president of our ministerial association. Cheryl Walker writes, "Individualism is so attractive in the beginning. For many people who felt the heavy yoke of being in faith communities where they could not fully be who they were, individualism tastes like the food they have been hungering for. But it is good only when we are starving. When we've had our fill, we look for food to sustain us for the long journey of life. That life-sustaining food can be found only in true communities of shared purpose and shared values, where the individual is affirmed but is not worshiped." End of quotation. Fortunately, in the past few decades, many of the congregations in our movement have generated energy and vitality by coming together with a sense of common purpose. Here at UUSS, we have embodied these inspiring trends from our movement. We have gained a greater sense of abundance and generosity and demonstrated that generosity inside our walls and beyond our walls. Many of our congregations are engaged in a journey toward racial justice and equity in our denomination and in our communities. We have come to understand our ministry to children and youth and families as expressions of our calling to care for all souls and build a loving community across the generations. In the past 2 years of pandemic disruptions, the steadfast support and the practice of mutual care by the vast majority of members and friends has been a vivid example of abiding loyalty and love. This is what covenant means: loyalty and love. When I think of moving from an I-church culture to a culture of shared commitment, I think about the first congregation that I served as a new minister. It was a UU fellowship, which had been around at the time for 35 years, but never had a full-time settled minister. After a couple of years of discernment, they had concluded that if they were going to grow in vitality, strength, and relevance, they needed full-time ministry. Yet they knew this would involve change and adjustment. Things would be different. For some, they would be unpleasant. And so they got me. After I arrived there, a devoted lay leader in the church told me that coming to their decision had involved many conversations, focus groups, and meetings. It had not been easy. But he said it had been worth it. But it had not been easy. He said that one longtime congregant had said, "I don't want this congregation to change until after I'm dead." Of course, it is understandable to seek to hold on to what is familiar, avoiding discomfort and avoiding a sense of loss that comes with change. That's a powerful impulse. This is why having a commitment to something larger than our own preferences is crucial for a community to remain vital and thriving. Another iChurch moment I remember from those early days is this. On Sunday mornings, an older member of the church made a fresh flower arrangement for the table up front by the flaming chalice. Sadie. Sadie was cute and friendly. Her bouquets were artistic, and she was highly praised for her lovely gifts. She brought fresh flowers twice a month, coming before the service and taking the bouquet home after it ended. Sadie was a lifelong Unitarian, having grown up in another UU church. She passed away a decade ago. Before my arrival, that congregation had been discussing whether to have 2 Sunday services instead of 1. Attendance was growing and the space was crowded. They had made a commitment to growth. By the end of my first year, these discussions led to a decision to try 2 services. Starting in September, we did. We had an early service, then coffee hour, and a second service. Sadie brought her floral arrangement before the early service, stayed for the service, and then took the flowers home. Second service, no flowers. When she was asked to consider leaving the flowers so people at the second service could enjoy them, she said no. It would inconvenience her to have to come back for them or to stay for the second service before taking them home. As a new minister, I didn't think to try to negotiate some solution with her, and nobody else did either. I wonder if her generous gift of the flowers was more about her contribution to the community as a whole, or more about being celebrated by the community for her talents. Fred Muir notes that many of us are moved to articulate our UU principles and live our UU principles, including the first principle, which is affirming the dignity and inherent worth of every person. Yet the UU principles are not individual statements of belief. They are promises we make to one another. He says they represent a commitment to sustain and create a community, promising to one another our mutual trust and support. This is the intention of covenant. The life of this congregation here in Sacramento includes many kinds of covenant. Some of them are implied, others are written down explicitly. For example, when volunteers are elected to lay leadership, they are joining in a covenant to show up and support their team, the board, the program council, and so on. Their team shares the purpose of working for the mission of the congregation and for its overall welfare. An example of a covenant which is written down was created last fall by our junior high youth group. They discussed a covenant, agreed on its contents, wordsmithed it, wrote it on newsprint, and posted it on an easel. Then they signed it. One line from that covenant says, "Take space and make space." This means participate in discussions, but leave space for others. Another line says, "Please let the adult leaders know if you can't show up on a Sunday." The group reviews this occasionally, especially when a new person arrives, and invites any new people to comment on it and then to add their names to it. When I was helping out last Sunday as a co-leader of the youth group, I added my signature to it. And one more explicit covenant here at UUSS is part of our program of Soul Matters small groups. Every Soul Matters session invites personal reflection and sharing our thoughts and sharing our own stories. The groups began in October and will conclude in May. Some groups meet in person, others on Zoom. When a person signs up for a group, this implies a commitment to the other people in the group. But what this means also is that if you join it, the group is making a commitment to you as well. I bet that most people think about coming to church as a matter of our own preferences and needs, our own choice. Of course, I saw it like that myself long before I was a minister. I was probably thinking things like, it's so good to get a friendly greeting and hear my name spoken. Or, I need to sing some hymns. I need to hear the music. Or, I am longing to sit quietly along with others. I choose to come so that I can be reminded that my values can matter to this world. I don't want to be alone. Have you ever felt this way when planning to show up for a service, whether in person or online? I've heard that many of you do. I'm so grateful that many of us can meet some of our needs for inspiration and connection even when participating online. It is amazing. Yet the paradox is that when we show up for something that we need, our participation helps others to have an experience that they need. Whether we are here, online, or in person, the desire for an experience which draws each of us here as a me becomes a we experience. Without realizing it, we show up for one another. This is a gift that you are giving. You are giving it now. Today, you are invited to recognize this gift. Why not claim it as your intention, your own intention? We all seek human contact. We all need reassurance. And by showing up for it, we provide it for others. This congregation is a voluntary organization. Nobody attends or joins or participates in UUSS because you have to. You make a choice. In Latin, the root word for volunteer and voluntary means will, as in free will. There is not one single way that we embody our commitments to a congregation, not one single way that we live out our loyalty and love, just as there is no single way that families embody their love and loyalty. But without a sense of love and loyalty, our life together is much more difficult and a lot less fun. A community of covenant makes things possible which we could not achieve on our own as individuals. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for your intentions of love and loyalty. When I think about what it means that hundreds of people here come together to make a congregation thrive, I find it to be a miracle. It is a miracle of trust in one another, of faith in the reliability of community. It is a sign of hope that our shared values can make a difference to one another and to the larger community. It is a miracle of love and loyalty. Thank you for this intention, this gift, this miracle that we call community. Thank you, and blessed be. Amen.
As we come together to celebrate individuality and covenant going into our year, we sing, "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing," and recognize the we. Come Thou Fount of every blessing, tune our hearts to Help us find ourselves in union. Help our hands tell of our love. With thine aid, O fount of justice, earth be fair as heaven above.
And now we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And I invite you to give a benediction to one another by reaching out to one another. You at home reach out to us, we reach out to you. May you depart in peace. And for all who see God, may God go with you. And for all who embrace life, may life return your affection. And for everyone who seeks a right path, may a way be found and the courage to take it step by step, one day at a time, moment by moment, breath by breath. Go in peace. Namaste.